Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam Astu Mavad Vishavane. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Ramanama Varanane. I delight in the beautiful name of Sri Rama again and again, for even once remembered, the name of Sri Rama bestows the fruit equal to the 1,000 names of the Lord Vishnu. Well, welcome to the continuation of the story of Rama. It is a historical story, and one of the clues about its historicity is its humanity. Life is not a smooth thing. At every twist and turn, some unexpected things come up. And yet, somehow, if we retain our sense of responsibility, our sense of divinity, our sense of adventure even, we can overcome every obstacle. In fact, man is a kind of machine, if you want, who is designed to overcome all the obstacles. These are not put in your way as a test, as some theological aspects of religions might tell us. It is not that they are there against us. It is not to make life difficult for us. It is to see whether we can hone up our skills and get around the obstacle, no matter what life throws at us. And life is meant to be a kind of asymmetrical thing. And so the story of Rama shows us how to get around the most difficult obstacles, the most challenging obstacles. At any given point in the story, things could have turned out differently, but life doesn't give us that. It could be that maybe originally Kaikeyi may not have listened to the maidservant. It could be that Rama need not have been banished. It could be that maybe Rama could return with Bharata. It could have been maybe that Rama could have stayed in the forest even with those people who gave him refuge. It could have been that the Marichi would not have run into the forest, that he would have submitted to Rama. Many, many possibilities are there. But the fact is that Sita is there in exile in a difficult position, and Rama is beside himself with trying to find out how to get her back. And in the midst of all this, you remember, Vibhishana, that is Ravana's brother, leaves the Ravana side of things, and he defects. And naturally, when somebody defects, there's a great suspicion. Again, it shows the humanity. The human element in the story suspects that maybe Vibhishana is a spy, that if he defected from the one side, he could easily defect from the other side. But Rama has listened carefully to all of these things, and he says something very interesting. He says there's a stronger reason to accept Vibhishana. He says when anybody comes to me for refuge, he says, I cannot reject him. This is my dharma. What a wonderful lesson in devotion. I repeat it. When anyone comes to me for refuge, and me meaning, of course, any aspect of that cosmic mind that we call our personal ideal, that is God to us. If we take refuge in the divine, then the divine, he says, cannot reject him. This is my dharma. It doesn't matter if as a result of this I suffer. Even at the cost of life, I must do this duty of mine. What a wonderful development, what a wonderful statement, espousing that aligned and intertwined with this Dharma is love. We see this with all our incarnations, with Buddha, with Jesus, and so on. Even at the cost of my life, I must do this duty of mine, which is described in Christianity as my Father's will. So he says, never can I deviate from it. Truly, even if Ravana himself has come to me for sanctuary, I would accept him, and I would do it without hesitation, he says. And how then can I reject his brother who has done me no wrong? So go and fetch him. My Lord Rama, it's wonderful how clearly the right stands out demonstrated when you speak, Sugriva says. Up to now, there were many, many different arguments. You see, we may take many positions in the name of justice, but there are different points of view. And in order to arbitrate correctly in our own minds what is the right thing to do, we have to get all the information. Much disinformation has been spread. In modern times, we even have a phrase for it. Developed in America, fake news. I attended once a seminar entirely dedicated to fake news and the question of fake news in our modern society, and how do we deal with even this phrase, fake news. And so, a well-balanced assessment of the situation, plus this intrinsic, superior element, which is above all judgment, and that is this dharma, the sense of righteousness, over above justice. You might be confused by that, but there is justice according to the law and according to sentiment and so on and so forth. There's something even superior to that. And so, my Lord Rama, it's wonderful. This is Sugriva's statement. And he says, I shall go and bring Vibhishana. And may he too become a loving friend of yours, even like us. And so he goes and fetches Vibhishana. Now, it is in the Vaishnava tradition in Hinduism that actually this particular episode in which Vibhishana is taken by the prince into his camp and innermost council, is actually held to be as important as the Bhagavad Gita itself. It illustrates the doctrine that the Lord accepts everyone who in absolute surrender seeks shelter at the Lord's feet, regardless of their merits or defects. He who is without blemish cast the first stone, Jesus says. Their sins are burnt, and by the mere act of surrender, and this is the message of hope to erring humanity. It's the heart of the Vaishnava faith that there is hope for the worst of us, even if only we surrender ourselves to the Lord, not just the Vaishnava tradition, but any tradition that holds a devotional element in view. So, why should we restrict this doctrine to any particular sect? It's not this, it's the heart of all religious traditions, actually, and of all religions in the world. Every world teacher, in fact, will stress the certainty of what we might call relief and redemption. And it's not just to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says, don't have any fear, cast off all doubt, I shall destroy all your sins. It's actually for all of us. Wherever in the world the divine has spoken to mankind in a human voice, this assurance has been given. Now, there are two ways in which we can regard Valmiki's account of Rama's acceptance of Ravana's brother. And Valmiki describes the rules of policy, the matters to be examined before one can accept a visitor into the enemy's camp. So it's shown in the speeches of the Vanara king and the cultured and accomplished Hanuman and Rama, the firm upholder of Dharma these people are. But in addition to just right policy, we see that Rama's character and personality are a mix of nature and nurture. Because he says, I can't reject anyone who comes to me for protection. And he says, this is my dharma. Even if Ravana himself comes to me, I wouldn't reject him. And so those who look on Rama as, let's say, an incarnation, what I like to call the cosmic balancing power manifesting in history. And even if we regard Rama as this incarnation, we can find in this utterance the essence, in fact, of any scripture or guiding text. The solemn assurance which Krishna gives to Arjuna later in the Gita, that assurance the Prince of Ayodhya declares in the presence of Sugriva and the others in this Vibhishana episode of the Ramayana, this divine assurance is the life and light that a world filled with sin and darkness needs. And when we talk about these episodes from the story of Rama, we will notice we're not just relaying a story. We're trying to find the inner, deeper meaning, without which the historical context of this is simply history and nothing more. Now we come to a different aspect of this, a different chapter. Because in the meanwhile, Ravana has done something foolish. He has sent a scout, a kind of spy, to seduce Sugriva from his loyalty to Rama. And this we find politically all over the world since the time of man's arrival on this planet. This devious nature is there. Don't forget, on the other side, there has suspected that Vibhishana initially was such a spy to persuade maybe the Sugriva, Ram's ally, please come over to the other side. And so he has made a mistake according to the account that is put here. The Rakshasa Sukha by name, he flies across and in disguise he meets Sugriva in secret. And with every appearance of a benevolent solicitude, he speaks to him. What does he say? He says, O Ravana, the king of Lanka has sent me because of his love, his affection and regard for you. And he sends you his fraternal greetings. You're a king and he has another, and there's no sense in your staking your high heritage and making common cause with a disinherited prince, namely Rama, against an all-powerful existent king of Lanka. And if Ravana desired Rama's wife and carried her off, how does it concern you? It's none of your business. What do you lose by it? So please consider carefully and choose your course with discretion. It's most expedient that you and your army should return right now to Kishkinda. And with various arguments, he tries to woo Sugriva across to Ravana's side. But Sugriva, his response was scornful and definite. He doesn't buy into it. And he says, oh, you low fellow, go and tell your king that he is no brother of mine. He's wicked, and being an enemy of my friend Rama, he is my enemy too, and we are out to rid the world of him and his wicked gang. He is a fool to imagine that he can offend Rama and still survive. So tell him that there's no escape for him. Tell him all this as from me, and if he wants to make peace also, then he himself must come and make peace. Otherwise, there'll be a disaster for you, for him, for the whole nation there. So when Sugriva delivers this message to the Rakshasa spy, the Vanaras catch hold of him and they begin to handle him roughly. But see now Rama sternly forbids it. He's a warrior, but he's still applying ahimsa. And so he sets him free to go back the way he came. And the spy rushes back to Lanka and conveys the result of his adventure to Ravana. Now that's an uneasy task to do, knowing the temperamental nature of Ravana. But as soon as Vibhishana's adherence was accepted by Rama, Lakshmana, and Sugriva, they crowned Vibhishana in advance king of Lanka, and they performed the Abhisheka with seawater. And Vibhishana pledged unchanging friendship to Rama, and Rama in turn gives his word that he would not return to Ayodhya without slaying Ravana. And just a side comment on this now. This Abhisheka, this is done when a temple is opened also. The whole temple is given this. And the deity that is installed within it is given this all the time on a daily basis, given it during puja. And the idea really of all ritualistic worship is to give that much honor to the universal king, the king of kings, the whole ruler of the universe. At least that much honor we give to that we give to an earthly king. Anyway, Sugriva, Vibhishana, Lakshmana, they ponder on how to cross the sea. That's their next challenge. They thought it best to begin with a prayer to the ocean god and submitted their opinion to Rama. And Rama accepts this. And it's a lesson for all of us. Wherever there is in front of us some seemingly insurmountable obstacle, the first thing we have to do is turn our mind inward and turn it toward prayer. And so Rama goes along with this, and here is the method of the prayer. He spreads dalva grass on the seashore, and laying himself on it, he begins to fast, addressing his request for a passage across to the king of the sea. What is the merit of fasting? Today it's been extremely fashionable to fast for varying reasons, principally for health. But of course, the origin of fasting is not like that at all. When you make a vow, you fast. In every culture, it's like that. That is, you take the mind's attention, normally diverted to the most fundamental aspect of life, the thing that would comfort us the most on the superficial level, and you deny the senses from that avenue, and you take your attention and focus it in, draw it in to a different object of attention, that which is more profound. And so the mind is not deviated by the things which biologically in our nature the human wants to use as a compensation, if you will, for a difficult situation. So for 3 days he prays. Fasting and prayer go together. He prays to that God who is within the sea and comes as the ocean, described as the God of the sea, but he receives no response. Then Rama, his eyes glowing with anger at the sea god's arrogance, so to speak, turns to Lakshmana and says, "The low-minded mistake courtesy and gentleness for want of strength. Mildness is simply wasted on them. See now how I shall bring this misproud sea to its senses with my arrows, which shall not only choke it with the carcasses of mighty fish, but even dry it up with their fierce odor. Bring me my bow and quiver, O Sumitra." Is a kind of desperation, and if we are angry, we may as well be angry in the right direction. So now, bow in hand and blazing with wrath, like the destroying fire at the end of the world, he shoots his arrows, which are irresistible as thunderbolts, into the bosom of the sea. Now, if we simply take the sea, as an element, as a part of nature, we know how to conquer it. In fact, that very bridge that is about to be built from the seashore of the subcontinent of India across to Sri Lanka, the remnants of which we can see today, it is said. There is some kind of proposal that it be removed for a better passage for sea vessels. And of course, this is being contested vigorously, being a sacred thing. So we know how to control nature, and we know how to destroy nature, unfortunately. And we know how to correct our mistakes if we have the will to do it. And so if we simply take the sea in this way as part of insentient nature, then we can conquer it. So these missiles that Rama is shooting, they disturb the sea to its depths, carrying death and dismay to all it contained, and presently the tortured waters begin to exhale steam in their agony. And it looks as though Rama, in his wrath, would convert the sea with its infinitude of water into maybe a desert of blazing dust, bereft of all life. And so, in the mythological language, the sea god could stand it no longer. And shining like the rising sun behind the Mount Meru, he appeared and stands before Rama. And with folded hands he says, "O my Lord Ramachandra, I am subject to the laws of nature, like the earth, the air, space, light, and all constituents of the universe. How can I depart from my nature, which is to be vast, deep, and filled with waves, and impassable? But this I can do, and ask the Vanaras to bring boulders and trees to build a causeway. I shall permit it. I shall help you by receiving and keeping in place the rocks and trees. This is all that I can do, and I shall also show the most favorable place for this causeway." In short, we cannot conquer the natural tendency of nature itself. It is designed in this way. However, we can find a way. We can always find a way. And the way is not to empty the ocean. No, the way is to make a way, to make a passage, to find a way around it. And how will we do it? Well, our insight, our intuition, our common sense also, and engineering ability can find what is the less deep route, what is the most narrow causeway which nature herself has provided, and then see how we can move from there. We only have our own environmental resources available to us. The most proximate to that will be the mind and the body. We know that we can only conquer the mind and the body, but thought also conquers all the elements of nature and arranges them for good or ill. Anyway, there is Nala, son of Vishwakarma, with you, who have the ability to build this path. May victory be yours. Vishwakarma, as we know, is the great architect and builder in the heavens. Rama, true to his nature, graciously accepts the sea god's apology and offers of help, and then, ordered by Rama, they all begin to work. How do they work? Thousands upon thousands of Vanaras. They go at it with enthusiasm and soon finish building the causeway. It's not an unusual thing in history. How do the pyramids get constructed? Thousands and thousands of workers. Even the great, great Hindu temples that we find in Cambodia, for example, Angkor Wat, we can see how there must have been at least hundreds and hundreds of people enthusiastic enough, paid enough, looked after enough, supervised enough, with great skills and talents, placing blocks one on top of the other and rotating them in such a way that they are so smooth that they fit perfectly together. We sometimes dismiss ancient times as being primitive from a technological and engineering point of view. But when we look at these structures carefully over thousands of years, we see the great sophistication that is there and puzzles us today. We find it in South America, we find it in various places, we find it in other places in Europe, in Africa, and so on, North Africa at least, and so on. Anyway, Valmiki, he describes this work at great length. And he sings with gusto of the noise and confusion of the gigantic project. It's not a small project, it's a gigantic project. The Vanaras, they go to the mountains and forests, and plucking rocks and trees, they drag them to the shore. And we know how great structures in the world have been brought from far away, from stones and various places far away. For example, we know in France, their great structure, very famous structure there, which is called Saint-Michel, and we see how rocks were brought by boat, huge granite rocks were brought by boat some 15 kilometers away by sea. So this great engineering project is there using the resources, that is rocks from the mountains, wood from the forests, rocks, trees, dragging them to the shore by various methods. And the larger Vanaras, they bring the big boulders and throw them into the sea. And as they fall down, the water splashes up sky high, says Valmiki. Nala soon stood and supervises their labors. And the leaders in charge of companies kept them active. And on top of the rocks and the trees, when the foundation was firm and dressed with grass and mud and all the things that would cement things like that into place, and small pieces of wood given to produce a level surface, the noise raised by the dam builders drowned the roar of the ocean. You can imagine what a great endeavor this was, and eventually, of course, the construction was complete. The new path shone across the sea like the Milky Way in the sky, and hosts of deities above rejoiced as hosts of Vanaras shouted below in exaltation. And all the deities and the rishis uttered their benedictions. Now, then they went on the causeway. Hanuman carried Rama on his shoulders, and Angada carried Lakshmana on his. The Vanara army crossed the sea, and there is a principle expounded here. Because as Rama stood bow in hand, the ocean god bows before him with clasped hands and says, Dear Ramchandra, earth, air, ether, water, fire, these 5 elements must follow the eternal laws of their nature. And tempted by pleasure or reward or frightened of punishment, can I ever swerve from my nature? Can water harden and become stone? Or can I reduce my depths into a shallow pond for your easy crossing? But in this way, the Ocean King has protested with all politeness to Sri Rama, teaching all of us a lesson. We cannot go against nature. We can only use nature. When gravity is in our favor, we can lower things. When gravity is against us, we have to engineer resistance. But both are within the laws of nature. It is within these laws of nature that we discover our own spiritual heritage. And we also learn the practical way that using nature's resources, we can overcome the difficulties that so-called nature provides us, understanding we are part of nature. What is nature? Fundamentally, it's comprising the subtle waves that we call the universe, technically called tanmatras, that arrive as mahabhutas in our sensate world. If we want to influence them, we have to go back and back and back, and all of this is ruled by cosmic mind. What we think, how we plan, all the ideals we put in place will all materialize for good or evil. They will all come to fruition. This is part of nature's law. And Valmiki puts into the mouth of the Ocean King a fundamental of our religious philosophy. And he explains the primordial relationship between God and between nature. God's law operates in and through nature. The laws of nature were created so that the universe may proceed by itself, and so too the laws of karma. If you ask today modern science whether the laws of nature are immutable and somehow just there, most of them will incomprehensibly assert, yes, they're all there. But why should they be there? How can there be laws without a lawgiver? This second part of the question is not addressed. But all of this leads us back and back to a fundamental principle, which is pure being itself. And the law of karma is also like this. It is also a law, a fundamental spiritual law of sowing and reaping, of giving and receiving. The five elements, all objects without life as well as all living creatures, must follow their own permanent laws. And according to the Hindu Shastras anyway, nature itself, the sequence and chain of cause and effect, the properties of matter and the law of karma, they are all ordained permanently by the divine. Nature itself is a witness to God. It's not proved by a suspension of the laws of nature. Now, this is the curiosity that we have, that certain questions that dualistic theology has to propose with certain difficulties, this approach gets round it. Nature and God not only work together, we can call it a creation if we like, that's okay for convenience, but that's one aspect of it. And we know that the creator without energy is only potential. What we call the creator mythologically as Brahma, for example, doesn't move, doesn't do anything without its corresponding expression, its Shakti, its power. In Brahma's case, we call this Saraswati. And how do you sustain things? The sustaining power we call Vishnu. Vishnu doesn't do anything without the emergent Shakti, the power that is contained within it. And the power and the substance are the same thing. They are held together in a potentiality until one manifests. That is the Shakti side. That we call nature. The same thing with the dissolution, the destruction of things, death, the withdrawal of things. The same principle arises. And so we can see this nature that is a witness to God, that is not proven by suspension of the laws of nature, but by observing these laws. And this is expounded clearly if we read the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Just to quote there, under my supervision, nature gives rise to all that exists, movable and immovable, and the universe evolves from this cause. And this is put briefly, of course, by Valmiki in the speech of the Ocean King. Every part of this is a lesson on the way. Now, Malyavan, the aged Rakshasa, he tries his best to impress on Ravana the error of his ways in a final attempt at peace. So he gives a speech going back to Sri Lanka now. Your time of good fortune is over, he says. Your sins have begun to bear their fruit and to dim your radiance. He knows this law of karma. You can trust no longer the boons you have obtained from the deities. Make peace with your enemies. Look at the army that has arrived, because naturally they know the army has arrived. The terrible host of vanas and bears. Look at the wonderful causeway so quickly built. It seems to me this Rama is Vishnu himself come in human form. Not only is he giving wisdom, he's also giving insight. And Ravana had no patience with such talk, of course. That's his nature. Your words are wormwood in my ear. What a beautiful expression. It looks as though you two have joined my enemies. Aren't human beings well known to be weaklings? Why are you afraid of this wretched man driven into the forest by his father? And he relies on the support of monkeys and bears. Of such a man you are afraid? Really, I'm ashamed of you. Or could it be that you cannot bear to see me happy? See, it's a device that people use in their false self-defense. Why'd you talk like this to me? I can't bend before Rama. Ego, pride comes. Pride comes before fall, is the saying. If it's wrong policy or wrong ethics, I can't help it. You may take it that it's part of my nature. I can't change it. You see, if we accept our faults as part of our nature, we cannot change it. If you say, it's just like this. You know, one of our fundamental workshops that we do deliberately to address this question of egoism is called this Enneagram and the Essence of Truth. I think there's a demand for it now, imminently here, or certainly in Dublin anyway. And so we will have to probably address that during the year. But why do we make this a foundation course? It's because the fundamental enemy, the fundamental problem is this egoism. Ego itself, a sense of identity, is necessary. But it has to be, in the language of Sri Ramakrishna, a right ego. And so we see the cause of all these problems of pride and of all these evil actions is really centered upon this egoism. What is egoism? Egoism is defined in Patanjali Yoga Sutras as the identification of the seer with the body, the seen. See, the body is an object. When the body is not viewed as an object, when it is viewed as a subject, this is called egoism. And we puff ourselves up with pride, and every difficulty we have can be traced to this source. For this reason, we do this personality development course. And so, he dismisses all of this out of hand. He says, I cannot bend before Rama. If it's wrong policy and so on and so forth like that. He says, I would far rather die fighting than sue before Rama for peace. And he has accepted, this is just my nature. In which case, if you state that, not only will you not change it, you cannot change it because you don't wish to change it. Anyway, Balyavan replies, consider well and do what you think best, of course. He's a diplomat. And he returns home uttering the usual benedictory words, well, victory to the king, victory to Ravana, and so on. The old man is Ravana's grandfather. And Ravana carefully stations his warriors. So he posts Prahasta at the eastern entrance. He posts Mahaparshva and Mahodara at the southern entrance. And Indrajit, his illustrious son, who is accomplished in the arts of secret magic, he gives him the western entrance. And while he himself decides to guard the northern entrance. And Virupaksha, the mighty, he's appointed the commander of the army within the city. They're preparing for self-defense. So having ordered the disposition of his forces and chief warriors, he feels he had ensured victory. And as his end is approaching, he listens to no one and foolishly believes himself unconquerable. And the ministers raise shouts of victory in advance to please the king, and then disperse to their stations. On the other side, Rama, Sugriva, Vibhishana, and others, they hold a council of war. Vibhishana duly lays before the council the information gathered by scouts who had gone out and watched Ravana's arrangements. In numbers, strength, and courage, Vibhishana said, "The army now mobilized by Ravana surpasses that which he assembled to oppose Kubera. Still, I have no doubt of Rama's victory." And Rama distributes his forces to meet Ravana's disposition and assigns to each commander the task he is to perform. Firstly, he orders Nila to meet Prahasta at the eastern gate. Angada is dispatched to meet Mahaparshva and Mahodara at the southern entrance. And at the western entrance, Hanuman is to encounter Indrajit, who, as we had stated previously, and we'll do it again, is the master of black magic. What does that mean? It means that it was understood in those days that the way you use your thought power is enormously important. Now Lakshmana and I shall meet Ravana, he says, the terror of the world, and we shall direct the assault on Lanka. Sugriva, Jambavan, and Vibhishana, you can stay behind with our main army. And the army rests before the assault. They go and rest at night on Mount Suela. The following morning, standing on the mountain top, they take a good look at Lanka. Now, Lanka, as we have said previously, is a beautiful city, and it sits on the summit of Trikuta, and it seems as if it's suspended from the sky. And behind the thick fortress wall, the Rakshasa army, they stand on watch, sentry, looking like another massive wall itself. You can just imagine the scene. And observing the great and beautiful buildings in Lanka, Rama is moved to pity because he sees, alas, just because of one person drawn by the noose of time, just because one person has committed a sin, all this wealth and the whole Rakshasa race must now be destroyed. And it's a terrible thing that this scion of a noble race should forget his real greatness and pull death and destruction on himself and his people. It is a tragedy for all of us that, given the possibility of our internal nobility, we decide to go into the path of self-destruction. Rama continues, however, anyway, we should now bend all our thoughts to the task before us to win this battle and destroy Ravana. There will be much confusion in the course of the battle. The Rakshasas will try to deceive us with many disguises. And let the Vanas and bears retain their own shape while fighting. We won't deviate. We won't go and do this disguising business. Vibhishana and his friends alone need assume human forms. And like Lakshmana and myself, the Rakshasas are enemies, will never take the form of man or monkey. They would think it beneath their dignity to do so. So if we stand together maintaining due order, we can know who is who and slay our enemies and help our friends. We won't score own goals, as it's called in sport, or shoot ourselves because of these disguises. We will know clearly. We won't actually do anything except we'll stay with our own nature, with our own identities, And the Rakshasas, it's beneath their dignity, really, to disguise themselves in any way like us. They're counting on the fact that what makes a Rakshasa is pride. Well, we leave it there. The next chapter that we'll pick up is to do with the beginning of the battle itself. And so we'll leave it there for this particular session. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thanks, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om